Hello, it's Nicole with No It's Crochet, and today we're going to be doing another Swatch Saturday test and review. And the yarn we're going to be testing, this amazing gloss fingering from Knit Picks / We Crochet. This is a 70% merino wool, 30% silk blend. I mean, oh my gosh, this is like luxury, right? And I have it in these different colors. So today we're going to swatch it up and see how it works out. But first, let's talk about the score. What do you think this is going to score? I think I'm going to give this a 3.6. What do you think? Is it going to get higher because it's luxury? I don't know. Let's find out. Let's head over there. Welcome, welcome. And here we are getting ready to do some of our testing on this lovely gloss fingering. Now, I do have to be transparent. I've actually worked with this yarn. I had crocheted most of a tank top with it before realizing that my sizing was way off and I had to start over again. So I frogged the whole thing. And so this gray is actually part of that. But let's get started by doing our test to see, is this truly a fingering? You know, I mean, it certainly could go into the sport. I think it's probably a little bit closer to a sport weight. That's, yeah, that's what I got to give it. I got to give it the sport weight. Maybe that's the reason why my gauge was, or my sizing was off. Now, did I gauge? I think I did, but, you know, I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that I didn't, so hopefully I did. We'll have to see. I don't know. Anyway, so here we are. This is the Knit Picks / We Crochet gloss in the fingering weight. Now, gloss also comes in a, I want to say it's a worsted weight, but I could be wrong. It might be the DK. And both of them are the, what do we got here? The 70% merino wool and 30% silk. I would expect with the wool factor in there that, because it's, I mean, it is merino, but it's not superwash. And the silk, I would actually expect this to be a really nice soft yarn. And what I'm going to do is, after I do this, I am going to swatch a bracelet and wash it and just kind of test it. And we'll do our review afterwards, our wrap up, and I'll let you know what I think overall. But my guess is, okay, we're getting some splits here. That's the second one already. Let me switch. I am using a 3mm hook. It does suggest a B to an E, and I'm bad with the letters. But I'm going to switch to my regular hook real quick because I know that one a little bit better. This one's a little bit pointier. All right, so let's go ahead. I like the Clover Amours much better, and that's the hook that I am used to. So when push comes to shove and I'm getting a yarn that does not behave the way I like it to, I go to my standbys. So this is, you know, I definitely already got a couple of splits there, and we'll make note of that as we wrap up. But the gloss yarn is actually fairly popular on Ravelry with over 20,000 projects. So that's quite a few, really, in the grand scheme. However, only around 500 of that 20,000 are crochet. And I did not check, but I wonder if that's because this yarn tends to get used more for socks, maybe. I wouldn't think the silk would hold up for a sock yarn. If you know, let me know in the comments below. But I would think that the silk would mean that you'd want to save it for a nicer garment. But I could be wrong about that. Maybe there's, you know, enough of the wool and the silk just sort of offsets. I know they add nylon to typical sock yarn because the nylon helps the wool stand up and stay better longer. So I wouldn't think the silk would be a good addition, but I could be wrong. You know? Yeah, I'm not the expert by any means. I just like to have fun, explore, research, and learn. And that's what I'm here for. So we're going to keep testing this. So I lied a little bit. I just checked my notes. There were 17,000 projects and 653 of them were crochet. So that's a little bit better. I mean, not a lot, but you know, hey, we'll take what we can get and hopefully not get this all tangled in the process. Oh yeah. All right. I know you guys know it. I know you know what I'm feeling right here. I'm going to try and tuck this in so it doesn't keep getting in our way. The reviews out of those were pretty amazing. So on Ravelry, it got an overall average of 4.4 out of 3,762 reviews. On Knitpicks, it got an average of 4.0 out of 98 reviews. So clearly people are not going on to Knitpicks and reviewing yarn that much. And just for giggles, I went over to We Crochet because if you're not familiar, We Crochet and Knitpicks are the same company with different branding. They didn't want to exclude the crocheters, so they created a brand new website that is just for crochet. And so it's all the same products. There are sometimes some slightly different sales, so it's always good to check both. But the Knitpick site is a little bit more geared towards knitters, and the We Crochet site is a little bit more geared towards crocheters. So I checked the reviews there as well, and there were actually 11 reviews for this yarn, and out of those 11 reviews, it actually had 5 stars. So overall, people really like this yarn, which is interesting when I got those two splits right off the bat. And perhaps what the issue is, now I have not actually officially done any research on this yet, but I hear there's something called a Z-twist versus an S-twist. And if the yarn twists one way, it's better for left-handed knitters and right-handed crocheters. And if it twists the other way, it's better for left-handed crocheters and right-handed knitters. I haven't verified that yet, but I have heard that. All right, so let's snippy dip that. Some of these swatches are so teeny tiny when I'm only doing 4 rows. So cute. And let's do our double crochet. we are done with that. And I have to tell you, I don't think this is my favorite yarn to crochet with. I mean, it's not bad. It certainly gets the job done, but a little too much thought involved there, I gotta say. So let's see here. Yarn is the gloss fingering. And the hook is a 3mm. Weight listed is a fingering, but I would put this more into the sport. Fiber content with a 70% merino and 30% silk. This actually does put this into the luxury blend level. I think our 5s are going to stop there, and I may have been a little bit optimistic with my 3.6. Let's continue on and see. Now, this does still have a very wool-like feel. So, you know, I'm going to do my little test afterwards. I'm going to wash it up and see if the washing takes out a little bit of that toothiness. But even upon just working with it, it's not the softest yarn. You would think that the silk would soften it up a little bit, but I think the silk really just contributes to the shine. There is a definite, really nice shine to this yarn. So we're going to put this in a 3.5 because, you know, I mean, it might soften up. We're going to see. Now, color range. This just missed the next level. There are 19 different colors in this yarn, putting this at a 2, but because it's so close to the 3, I'm going to give it a 2.5. Splitting. Okay, so when I was using this crochet hook, I did get I got a couple of splits. Once I switched to this one, which is actually just a knockoff Clover Amour, I only got one split once I switched. So I think to some extent, using a hook that you're familiar with can definitely significantly change the outcome of the project. I had to think about that. Definitely significantly. Yes, that works, I think. Anyway, it can change the outcome of the project. But since we got 3 splits, that puts us into the 4. Stitch definition, I mean, hey, I've got no complaints on that one for sure. This is not, I mean, there's just a slight halo to the yarn, making it a level 4, but it's pretty clean overall. Now let's check this drape. All right. This is a smaller swatch because it is a thinner yarn, and that does sometimes affect the drape of it. I would say, I mean, it's not the drapiest, loosest out there. I'm gonna put this in a 3.5. I mean, I can't even give it a 4. All right, let's check this frog. Not too bad. We'll give that a 4. I mean, there's a few little tugs here and there. The washability, hand wash only, lay flat to dry. So that puts us into a 2. Now, price is actually a lot more reasonable than you would think for a merino silk blend. It comes in at $10.99 for a skein, and you get 220 yards on a skein, which puts the price per yard at just shy of 6 cents. So we are at the 4. Can you believe that? It did. I mean, it's an affordable yarn. Barely squeaks in, but barely. Yes. So not too bad overall. Now let's do our math and see how close to the 3.6 I got. before we do, I want to know, what do you think? Have you put your scores in yet? It's your last chance. Okay, so we've got 2.5 divided by 9. I did it again, 3.61. Wow, I'm getting good at the scoring thing. That's really very close. So what I'm going to do before I do my final wrap up, I'm actually going to create a bracelet out of this that I can wear so that it's right on my arm here, so that we can kind of just test the itch factor on this. Now, I have been reading that if you wash your wool and add just a little bit of vinegar, it kind of takes the toothiness out of that yarn. And if I can take the toothiness out of it, then there's going to be a different grade between this, which is not the most pleasant yarn to work with, but totally doable. And if it's done, then it's pleasant to wear, versus the one that is just unbearable, like the fisherman's wool, where the micron count is so high that it's just miserable to work with. Okay, we're back, and look, I have a bracelet that I have made out of this yarn, and what I did is after I made this, I washed it in a little bit of water with just a tiny, tiny bit of vinegar in it. I've been reading that the vinegar helps to break down some of that itchy scratchiness, and I gotta say, I definitely think that this is much softer than this. So I think there might be something to that. That gives me a little bit of hope that maybe even if a yarn I'm working with is a little bit rough in the process, that I can still make an amazing garment and wear it next to my skin without that, right? I know some of you out there know what I'm talking about. There's still going to be some yarns that are just not an option. I get that. But I think the gloss fingering passes the itch test. So at a 3.6, would I buy this yarn again? You know, I probably would, but I'm not going to seek it out. So for example, if there was a pattern that called for this yarn and they had the colors that I was like, oh, I really want to make it in that color, I absolutely would buy this yarn again. But I wouldn't buy it just to kind of keep in my stash. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I think that's sort of the verdict. It's not a bad yarn by any means. I think the 3.6, that score is decreased a little bit because of the fact of that it has to be a hand wash only and there aren't a lot of color options. And that drape is not that great, although I did make this with a slightly bigger hook, and so the drape on it is definitely better. So there are a couple of points that maybe could increase just a little bit on my cheat sheet score here. But overall, it's not going to be one that I'm going to seek out on a regular basis. But I want to know, how close were you to the score? And if you've ever used this yarn, and if you would ever consider buying this Merino wool silk blend. Let me know in the comments below. And Farah, frog us out of here.